Was probably in my mid-teens, and I thought I was very cool, and I just never investigated anything behind atheism. I just had these impressions that religion was antiquated, it was man-made, it was made to control people. Religious people were simple-minded, they only believed because their family believed. And so that's the other trap that I was in. I thought, my family doesn't believe in anything. They don't have a particular worldview, so I'm free. And this is what I find is a huge hole in the way that a lot of us are educated, not just me. I have actually taught a class at Johns Hopkins before for undergraduates, and I've taught a little bit of medical ethics. And I find that I see the same issues that I saw with my education and their education, in that we're not even taught to ask the questions. We're not even taught that worldview is something that we should be cultivating. We're not taught that worldview is even a thing. So I was just sort of busying myself with work that I thought was good and productive and meaningful, but I never bothered to ask the deeper layer of questions beyond that, to ask why I was pursuing science. A lot of other students are very similar. They will sacrifice fun, they will sacrifice relaxation. Oftentimes, I also sacrificed my health. A lot of students nowadays are very anxious, or dealing with certain, health issues, and will work themselves to the bone despite that. And for me, it ended up, sort of revealing a bunch of health issues, because I was just so stressed. So a lot of secular people like myself will sacrifice a great deal to pursue science or to pursue excellence, but there's no consciousness or underlying reason, for why we're making those sacrifices, or why it's even good to make a sacrifice in the first place. There's no really understanding of why we're ordering certain virtues above another. And so for me, that was the main hole in my upbringing and in my entire education, was that I didn't even ask the questions. I was content to do and to be intellectually superior and to be a high achiever and to be complimented by everybody, because from the outside, I just looked hardworking and kind and virtuous. But those virtues distracted from the very deep pride and other sins that were underneath, and from the ignorance also, that I didn't even know why I believed the things I believed, what I was aiming for, and what the purpose of it all was.
Yes, that's so interesting. I think a lot of people are, like you say, just caught in that trap of just achievement as an end of itself, unto itself. But it's interesting to me. You made the statement that you weren't taught to even really think about what those big worldview questions were. But were you aware of the underlying naturalism and scientism that was underlying your educational experience, or am I presuming there?
I think I was aware of it on some level. I don't think I could have articulated it. And I think a lot of what I articulated, so I declared myself to be an atheist, and then I switched to an agnostic, and then I think I went back to atheist before I became a Christian. And I think a lot of what I articulated was just my desire to declare myself firmly somewhere. I think the fact that I didn't have a coherent worldview, and I wasn't asking any of these questions, let alone asking the right questions. And so I wasn't intellectually there, but I emotionally felt that vacuum. I felt that void. And so I wanted to fill it with something. So I filled it with the label atheism for a long time.
How old
Uh,
how old were you when you kind of identified as an atheist?
I was probably in my mid-teens, and I thought I was very cool, and I just never investigated anything behind atheism. I just had these impressions that religion was antiquated, it was man-made, it was made to control people. Religious people were simple-minded, they only believed because their family believed. And so that's the other trap that I was in. I thought, my family doesn't believe in anything. They don't have a particular worldview, so I'm free. But now it's so easy to look at, even my work I'm doing right now something very uninteresting probably for a lot of people, but I'm doing something called matrix factorization, and I'm trying to find patterns that are generalizable across multiple patients, that explain some biological phenomenon that's happening in the tumor. And so I assume that I can find these patterns that will repeat themselves in the future, that are generalizable. I assume that I have a rational mind. I assume that I'm a logical thinker, that if I write this down, and I write my experiment, I design it well, that if somebody repeats it, that they'll get similar results. Like you said, there are so many assumptions underlying not only my rational abilities and my ability to think and reason, our senses as human beings, that I can interpret something and get the same visual feedback. My brain can interpret the same image that it's seeing the same way that somebody else's brain will. Um, I'm going to see the same pattern in from a scientific theory. It's going to manifest itself the same way tomorrow as it does today, as it did yesterday. All of those things I completely took for granted, and I didn't recognize that until I started to read a little bit more as a Christian. And John Lennox was actually, his books were the first things that made me realize that.
Atheism presents itself as a trap. Come to me, all who feel mentally inadequate or perhaps guilty of your pursuit of pleasure, and I will give you justification, and I will feed your ego, allowing you to declare yourself a truly free thinker, far above those who believe that this designed universe had a creator. Atheism, whether you see it as a lack of belief in God or a complete rejection of the belief entirely, fails to account for purpose. Our sense of purpose, why we do anything, why should we sacrifice years of our lives for education? Is it just about the temporal gain? About pleasing other people? About feeding our ego? There is no empirical evidence that we have any ultimate purpose in these pursuits, and there's no empirical evidence that we should even believe our own minds. Our own minds on atheism, brought about by random chance and our own thoughts and actions predetermined. Oh, how absurd then is the debate on God's existence if this were truly the case. Thanks be to God that it is not. Christ offered something much superior. Come to me, all who are burdened, heavy laden, and I will give you rest. It's not about feeding the ego, about nurturing the mind, body, and soul. Christ is king, and every knee will bow. That's a guarantee, prophesied just as Christ coming to us was prophesied in Isaiah. We'll continue this journey together. Have a blessed day.